that's going to lead us to second part of our breakdown.
Boom. The Notre Dame pass defense versus the Oklahoma State pass offense. And if you're looking at these numbers for the first time, clearly the advantage goes to Notre Dame just based on the numbers, right?
The numbers that matter to me, yards per game don't matter because yards per game are if you're beating teams convincingly, then they're going to throw for more yards.
100%.
Notre Dame ranks 27th in yards per attempt, 23rd in yards per completion. They've allowed the third fewest touchdowns. They've had the 10th most interceptions. They have the 12th best pass efficiency defense in the country, and they are 5th in the nation in sacks. I think those are the numbers to me.
Yeah.
It's a very disruptive defense, which is sacks plus interceptions. Mm-hmm. They get their hands on a lot of footballs and a lot of the big games this season, especially. Those have been big parts of what has allowed Notre Dame to be successful. And the other thing too is this is a pretty big improvement from where they were last year. Notre Dame took a bit of a step back last year in pass efficiency, and in 18 and 19, Notre Dame was excellent in pass efficiency defense. In 18, they ranked 6th. They're at 105.6. Obviously, that was the year they had Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott safety. You had Julian Love and Troy Pride at corner. All 4 of those guys are in the NFL now, although Troy Pride is injured. And then 2019, you were 5th in the country at 110.15. Last year, they took a bit of a step back despite playing a bad schedule. That's the other thing is they did not play a very good schedule last year. And ranked 34th in the country at 126.19. Then you lose Nick McLeod. You lose Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You lose Dalen Hayes. You lose Adi Ogundiji. And then you lose Kyle Hamilton halfway through the year, and you make a big jump, and you're the number 12 pass efficiency defense in the country, despite playing a schedule that had several teams that were coming into the season you thought were going to be really good throwing the football. And I think those are things that this is a really good pass defense, has been a really good pass defense when they can limit the big plays. That's going to be the key in this game. Is I don't see Oklahoma State passing the ball on Notre Dame with consistency. The concern I have is twofold. Number one, third down, right? Because they have good route runners. They, third down, and then number 2 is big plays, whether it be guys getting turned loose because, you've got a new play calling operation, all those type of things. And then number 2 is just guys winning one-on-ones. Tay Martin's a guy that Jaden Bray are 2 guys that concern me about winning those one-on-one matchups against a Clarence Lewis or Tariq Bracy, because they're the guys that are the bigger receivers that have kind of given Notre Dame some of those problems. And I think to me, those are the question marks and concerns I have, Vince, is, are they going to be able to play at a high level in this game? That's a question mark, because if they can, then they'll shut the pass game down. I'm not worried about that at all.
Sure.
But they've got to go out and prove that. And that to me remains certainly a question mark.
Well, big plays are always a concern, especially when you're starting a guy who's is getting his second career start in Ramon Henderson. And he is a long rangy guy, no question. But is he going to be peeking in the backfield? Could they get him, taking one misstep? A safety takes one step the wrong direction, he gets beat, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it just is what it is. It's not Kyle Hamilton and with makeup speed and long strides, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But that's a genuine worry. That's a genuine concern that we have is big plays. And I personally believe the only way that Oklahoma State stays in this game offensively, they're going to have to hit big plays. They're going to have to.
Or Notre Dame's offense turns the ball over. Those are the only
and gives them good field position.
But to your point, specifically just about this matchup,
right?
Notre Dame's defense against Oklahoma State's offense, it's big plays.
It has to be.
It really is. It's Notre Dame losing gap contain on an inside zone and the guy cutting back and running for 50 yards. It's
correct.
It's missing a tackle in space and an 8-yard catch turns into a 30-yard gain. It's Tay Martin or Jaden Bray getting over top of the defense and Spencer, because Spencer Sanders, the one thing, he's got a big arm.
He does.
He can throw the ball down the field now.
No doubt.
And if your technique isn't good, if they're able to kind of, when they've got Houston Griffith or DJ Brown at safety, some teams have been able to kind of isolate them in coverage and beat them with big plays. Can Oklahoma State figure out ways to do that and then also protect the quarterback? Because The only good thing on this whole thing, I mean, they rank 76th in yards per game, 80th in yards per attempt, and 80th in yards per completion, 104th in interceptions, 71st in completion percentage, 81st in pass efficiency. Those are all bad numbers. I mean, that's bottom half of the national rankings. And yet that number down at the bottom, sacks allowed, is the one that concerns me. And it's twofold. Number one is they actually give up a decent amount of pressure, but it's when Spencer Sanders can make people miss and take off running, and that's where they move the chains. And at times they have been good at giving him time to throw. When they give him time to throw and he's not pressured and he's comfortable, he'll make plays in the pass game.
Sure.
He'll make big plays in the pass game. And that goes back to what you had said earlier, Vince, answering the question from yesterday. That's why the performance of the Notre Dame defensive line is so important.
Yes.
You cannot let Spencer Sanders get comfortable, because if he gets comfortable, he's going to beat you. If you can pressure him, and then when I mean pressure, I don't care about the number of sacks. Yeah, it's nice to have sacks because sacks are negative yards. But you could have 5 sacks, and if that's your only 5 or 6 good pass rushes the whole game, that quarterback's going to be pretty comfortable.
Right.
And it's got to be the consistent pressure, the consistency of getting on him, where he's just getting harassed almost play after play. If you can do that, that's when Spencer Sanders will make mistakes. I mean, Vince, you'll see him, some of the interceptions he throws are just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes no sense why you tried that. Because I'll say this, we were talking about Ian Booker. Thing I'll say about Spencer Sanders, big arm, athletic, that is a tough kid and a confident kid, because he thinks he can make throws that he can't make. And he'll try to make throws with guys hitting him and clinging on him and all that. And you're like, hey, kudos for you being tough, but dude, take the freaking sack. You know what I mean? Like, because you throwing him the ball is not helping. And like, he'll throw third down picks. And I've always said this, Vince, third down interceptions, when you're on your own midfield or you're backed up and you throw a bomb down the field, you just take a chance and they pick it off. That doesn't bother me. It's like a punt, as long as they don't run it back, right? But he'll make them where he's like, they're at their own 40 and he'll throw a pick at like the other 45 and they're getting the ball at midfield.
Right.
Or they're running it back. I mean, it's bad picks, right?
Not every interception is
necessarily bad. Oh, gosh,
I feel like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
He's either making a spectacular play with his legs or his arm, or he's just throwing a befuddling interception. I mean, you're like,
in one series, you will watch him make a throw where you're like, wow, that was an NFL throw.
Right.
And then the next, like 2 plays later, he'll make a throw. You're like, how was that guy a starting quarterback in college?
Right.
In the same series. And that's got to be the maddening thing for Oklahoma State fans, because you're like, man, if we could get the first version of him where he can make these big throws and he can make plays with his legs, and like, boy, if we could just get that guy to show up more consistently,
yes,
boy, man, we got a chance to be really good. That's got to be how Oklahoma State fans think. It's just when he's bad, it's like he'll have open guys and he just won't set his feet, and he'll miss the guy by like 5 yards. I mean, he'll just throw like 5 feet over his head or 5 yards out in front of him. And you're like, how did you miss that guy? And then there's times where he'll like fit it between 3 dudes, and you're like, oh my goodness, how did you make that throw?
Boom or bust.
It is.
I'm telling you.
It's got to be maddening.
And as a coach, you're just like,
right.
Like, you make these amazing throws and then you can't throw a hitch. Like,
right.
what has happened?
Right. And so the key for Notre Dame is going to be, don't let him get it comfortable to make those. Because here's the thing about quarterbacks like him. When they get into a groove, they are hard to stop, and they're hard to get out of that groove. It's like, if you allow him to get into that zone where he's comfortable and he's putting the ball where he wants it, it's going to be a long day for Notre Dame. Very long day for Notre Dame. You've got to know right away. You've got to let him know right away. I mean, honestly, I'd almost call a blitz on the first series, like just first
get him off his, hit him.
Yep. You know what I mean? Like, don't hit him dirty. I'm not talking about hitting him dirty, but just look, if he completes the ball and they gain 15, they gain 15. But you just let them know, like, hey, we're here. And
we're going to be here all afternoon.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and again, when we say that, we're not talking about dirty hits. We're not talking about late hits, because we're not talking about penalties or trying to hurt a kid. It's just about being a quarterback. When the first 5-6 times you drop back, you get hit on like 4 or 5 of them.
Right.
You start looking for that, and not looking for it from a fear standpoint, but your clock speeds up. Like, hey, I got to get rid of this ball because
just
they're
ask
going
Ian
to be
Book
coming.
last night,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
situation. I'm not dogging Ian Book. I'm just saying because that's a relevant thing that a lot of people in the chat watched. People, they were flying at him, man, and he was like, he was ducking and he was trying to get out of the way. And if you can get a guy off his platform and you get him thinking about the rush, it's game over. I mean, that's
Right.
what you want. You want him to be thinking about the rush, not thinking about his reads.
Because here's the thing about Notre Dame, and I wrote about this earlier in the week, is their sack numbers are great, and when their pass rush is on, it's really good.
Yeah.
But they aren't consistently a good pass rush, in my
Agreed.
opinion. Like, you look at their numbers, like I'm trying to think. I think like they had, 40, according to Pro Football Focus, they had them down for, I think, like 45 sacks and 37 hits on the quarterback, right? Because they count sacks a little differently. It's kind of strange how they do it, but they had them down. I'm trying to find that article because I really want to give the specific numbers, but it was really eye-popping. So Pro Football Focus had Notre Dame down for 45 sacks, and which was 5 more than they had in 2018, right? But they had them down for just 37 hits on the quarterback on top of those sacks. So that's like 92, 82 total hits on the quarterback. Okay. Well, you look at the 2018 defensive line, they had only 40 sacks, which is 5 fewer, but they had 51 hits on the quarterback. That's over 90, right? And you look at Oklahoma State, for example, who had arguably the best pass rush in the country. Pro Football Focus, if you take out take out the game against the FCS opponent, so that way you're looking at 12 games versus 12 games, right? They had 52 sacks and 50 hits on the quarterback. That's 102. That's 20 more. That's almost 2 more per game than Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing for me is, and the number of hurries per game was higher as well. You've got to be more consistent with the pass rush. And that's where I'm really curious how the game plan is going to be. What do we see from Isaiah Foskey? Do we see – because I read one of the dumbest things ever from Pro Football Focus the other day. And this is why I say, look, when it comes to the data collection, great stuff. When it comes to analysis and grades, it's really dumb stuff. And they were talking about Isaiah Foskey's sack numbers are misleading. And I'm like, because they said his overall pass rush grade was like a lower number. And I'm like, well, that's partly because A, your grading system is just dumb. And number 2, because he dropped into coverage 70 times. Whew, I'm glad I got that mute button on time.
Bless you.
I'm a loud sneezer, so I'm glad that would have scared some people. So the point is like your grading system is wrong, because when he rushes the quarterback, I mean, if anything, his pass rush numbers are skewed in the opposite direction. They're lower than they actually should be, because he doesn't rush as much. So those are the things I look at. Now, so like when you look at the pass rush, there's 2 guys to me. Number 1 is Isaiah Foskey. Do they turn him loose and let him rush quarterback, or do they do the thing where they're going to drop him into coverage a bunch? Against this team, who's a running first team, he needs to be playing at the line, or if they're going to move him around, which I'm fine with, we said this all year, make sure that wherever you line him up at linebacker, off ball, edge, wherever you do him, he's got to be coming hard at the snap. As long as they're doing that, then I'm good with them moving him around. They don't have to just put his hand on the ground on the outside. I like that versatility. And that's also kind of why I'm interested to see Mike Elston call plays in this game, because now you have the D-line coach as the guy calling the plays.
Right. It was the other guys, not Marcus Freeman, kind of putting the game plan together as well. And I don't know how much that changes things, because I'm sure he had input.
Sure.
But he's flat out said, he's like, I'm not there every day. Like, I'm doing other things. So, is it going to be a completely different defense? Of course not. You know what I mean? But there's going to be some nuances, and there's going to be some differences, I think, based on the people that put the game plan together, number 1, and the fact that Mike Elston is officially calling the plays. Now, Marcus Freeman's going to be involved. We were going to talk about this a little bit before, but you could see a little bit different. Maybe he wants to get his guys involved a little bit more. I mean, it's going to be interesting. That's for sure. I think that's going to be another fun nuance to kind of pay attention to in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be very intriguing, to say the least. It's going to be very intriguing. There's no doubt about it.
You let these guys loose, I think they can have a really good
The other
game.
guy to me that's very important is Jason Adamiola. So if I were to tell you, according to Pro Football Focus, who had the most pressures on Notre Dame's defense, you might think your first guess might be Foskey. Jason Adamiola, according to Pro Football Focus, had 11 more total hurries than Foskey. Now, he rushed more. He rushed about 80 times more than Foskey, which, again, is a problem for me. Jason Adamiola should not be pass rushing 80 more times than Isaiah Foskey, but that's just the reality of it. And he had 12 hits on the quarterback this year. I mean, a third of his pass rushes ended with a hit on the quarterback, whether it be a sack or a hit. That's the other guy to me that has to have a big game. And that's I mean, because if you start getting pressure right up Spencer Sanders' face, that's where you start having problems. So I remember last year against Alabama, Jason Adamiola was people sometimes you can overlook a individual performance because of the overall team performance. The team performance against Alabama was not good last year. But if you go watch Jason Adamiola last year, Bama couldn't block him.
Dude had a game.
Couldn't block him. And he's had moments like that this year where it's like they have no chance of blocking that guy. I'm hoping that they turn him loose in this game a little bit. And you kind of get into that danger zone of, do you want to turn him loose, but you also don't want him to have 4 sacks and go pro. You know what I mean? But
that's true.
But you got to do what you got to do to win. And to me, turning Isaiah Foskey and Jason Adamiola loose is the key to winning this game.
Yeah.
And if it means you lose them to the NFL, you lose them. Hopefully they'll make a wiser decision, because one game is not going to completely change the NFL's view of you. If you were a 5th-round pick coming into the game, you're not going to be a first-round pick because you had a big game.
Or maybe 4th. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. But they're keys. I mean, when they are taking games over, you have no chance.
Exactly.
No chance. And Mike Ellison and the defensive staff need to turn him loose. Because look, so I'll give you a little nugget, a little inside scoop that I haven't even put on the message board, okay? I had been told for a while that Mike Ellison wasn't really in the conversation for defensive coordinator. Some sources have said that. I've actually been told by a couple sources lately that he is in the conversation for the defensive coordinator. It's not definitive that they're going to go outside the program. Mike Ellison has a little bit something to prove in this game too. If he wants to be the defensive coordinator, like, this is a game where it's like, hey, you go out there and have 7-8 sacks and shut down Oklahoma State's offense. You can walk into that office. You know that meme on Twitter of Vince McMahon doing like the pimp
Just
walk coming down the steps, right? Like, that's Mike Ellison walking into the office when they get back to Notre Dame if they shut out Oklahoma State, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's do this interview now, baby.
Yeah, right.
So he's got something to prove too.
That's funny.
I think defensively, this team kind of hit its stride late. I want to see if a month off slows that down, or if they're able to kind of really send this thing off, because if Adamiola and Foskey come back next year, this will be a championship defense. There's no question about it. Now, will the other side of the ball catch up? We'll find out. But I truly believe, because I expect Cam Hart to come back, I believe with the young linebackers that are emerging, getting Maris Luafau back, Riley Mills, Aaronsberger, Cross, Lacey are all going to be a year older at those other edge spots.
Sure.
You bring in Tyson Ford and Aiden Gobera. You'll have Maris Luafau coming back. Bo Bauer comes back. Jack Kaiser comes back. You got the best freshman class of linebackers in the country coming back. You've got Prince Collie going into year 2. Ramon Henderson and Xavier Watts with a full year of safety under their belt. Cam Hart with a full year corner at his belt. The freshman corners, develop. Boy, this defense has a chance to be special next year if they come back. And this is the kind of game that can send them into the offseason with the confidence that they can be special if they handle their business, and it's going to start up front. But